Today is April 1st, April Fool's Day. The one day a year where we all agree it's okay to mess with each other a little. But let me ask you something. What happens when the joke doesn't land? Or worse, what happens when it goes too far? Because not everything labeled a joke feels like one. Let's get into it.
Hey, Steffi K got something to say. Talk that listens, clears the way. Truth on the mic, grounded in change. You sticking with that? Oh yeah, we sticking with that. Laugh it out, talk it through, we ain't looking back.
Some chats ain't easy, but we take it slow. Tough stuff, tackle now, watch us glow.
You sticking with that? Yeah, we sticking with
So, I met some people over the weekend in Florida. I actually had a friend of mine from Nebraska visiting for a few days. And while we were eating lunch one day, we met two older gentlemen who were waiting for their wives to finish up shopping. Turns out they're from Iowa. And of course, there's an ongoing history between Iowa and Nebraska, which led to a bunch of smack talk and nonsense back and forth about the recent basketball game from last week. Anyway, one of the guys, let's call him Stan, mentioned that I look just like Cousin Jody, and it sounds like it's his wife's Cousin Jody. I was like, oh, really? I've been called a lot of things, but Jody's not one of them. Anyway, my friend and I ended up running into them later. Immediately, Stan asked that my friend and I keep the joke going that I was Jody. And for me, it was interesting because I know my cousins very well. I know how they think. I know how they move. With some of them, I know the jokes that they're going to play on me before they even know they're going to play them on me. And it's just a relationship we've always had. So for me, if someone tried to show up and say they're my cousin and they're not, I would know about it. But I thought, you know what, this could be kind of fun. And in fact, I don't think I even put too much thought into it. But we played along. So we're thinking, okay, haha, funny. And she immediately looks at me and says, Jody, did you lose weight? And I said, I did, 97 pounds, which we all know is true. And this went on and on and on. And apparently she'd last seen me at a family funeral. And a while down the road, she kept asking me, well, how is so-and-so and how is so-and-so? We were all sitting in kind of a circle formation at a table, and it was noisy and etc. And I said to the husband a few times, you know, we've got to tell her this just doesn't seem right. And he says, oh no, she's going to think this is funny. Trust me, she's going to think this is hilarious. Later. And they've been married 48 years, from Iowa, and just the nicest people you could meet. They've already invited my friend and I to join them for some meals and family togetherness next year. And we were both thinking, you know, it's nice to make a connection and how awesome. About an hour later, we're still carrying on with the joke. And my friend and I, although we weren't really in a position to communicate, we both were kind of feeling like, okay, this has gone way too far. So by the time we left, the joke was up and she did know, was not super excited about it. But again, it was a 1 hour period of time that just kind of went too far. Could we have stopped it at any time? Absolutely. Did we? Nope. It just kind of was one of those moments that seemed funny, right? What harm is it? What harm is there in me pretending to be Jody? I mean, physically nothing, obviously. There's really no harm. It was kind of a ha-ha funny. But it's interesting, you know, for someone such as myself who stands for truth, it just didn't feel good. And that moment stuck with me because it made me ask something I think we don't ask enough. Where do we draw the line between a joke and a prank? And something that just doesn't sit right anymore. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this isn't just about one moment. This is something we've actually built into our culture. I mean, think about it. Shows like Punk'd, hosted by Ashton Kutcher, ran for years, nearly 100 episodes, and even got rebooted. Which tells you something. People don't get tired of watching pranks. But now, it didn't stop on TV. It moved into our phones. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. On TikTok alone, videos under #prank have racked up tens of billions of views. Billions. And some creators are getting millions of views on a single prank because the formula works. Surprise plus reaction equals attention. And studies even show people create prank content for entertainment, creativity, and attention. Which makes sense, because the bigger the reaction, the more people watch. And somewhere along the way, we didn't just start enjoying jokes, we started rewarding them. Because there's a difference. A joke, everyone's in on it. You laugh together. A prank, someone's not in on it. And for a moment, you're laughing at them. And that doesn't automatically make it wrong, but it does make it different. And here's the part I can't ignore. I didn't just watch it happen. I was part of it. I said yes. And at first, it felt harmless. But the longer it went on, the more I started feeling like, wait, this isn't mine to play with anymore. This is someone's relationship, someone's trust. And that's the part we don't talk about. Sometimes it's not just about the person being joked on. It's about the people we pull into it, too, because we've all been there. Laughed along, went with it, even when something in us quietly said, this is going a little too far. That feeling right there, that's the line. And if I'm being honest, this isn't the first time I felt that. There was a time in my life when I was on the other side of this. It's a story not many people know. It was right around ninth grade. And this was, of course, long before cell phones. And it was when you had that long cord still hooked up in your house. But basically everyone could still hear. I had someone call me from my school and say that they were Ted Nugent and they were going to pick me up for a date. And this was actually before I was even dating. I can kind of laugh about it now. Anyway, if you don't know who Ted Nugent is, you could find out pretty quick. But this story isn't about him. So over the period of maybe a few weeks, this Ted character would call me and we would talk for long periods of time, if I recall. And he never did show up to take me out. It turns out it was actually a kid named Trevor from my school. He and I have talked this out, laughed about it. He's apologized, all the stuff. So what happened was a friend group of boys were sitting around one night bored and just going through the yearbook, calling girls randomly to basically talk to them and then invite them out on a date that they were never going to show up for, basically. And they were doing this under the premise that they were Ted Nugent. Now, I had no clue who Ted Nugent was, which made it even funnier for them the whole time. So had something like that happened in today's days with social media, that could have been devastating. But I just moved on and, of course, remembered the story as a powerful, pivotal moment in my life, as it was one of the first times that I learned that not everybody has your best interests in mind and that people do lie. And again, what was funny to them at the time wasn't that funny to me. There's a difference between laughing with someone and putting someone in a position they don't even know they're in. Because the moment a joke depends on someone not knowing the truth, you're not just creating laughter, you're playing with trust. And, they'll laugh later, is sometimes just a way of avoiding what doesn't feel right now. As I mentioned earlier, I'm actually quite close with my cousins. And this is my first cousins. There's 12 boys and me. There's been more pranks pulled on me than I can imagine. A lot of it is little stuff like coming up behind me, sitting on the roof with a bucket of water, or a hose on the side of the house so I come walking out while, they might lead me out there and they're... I guess with them, I just expected it. And it's been my whole life. And that goes all back to intent. They love me so much. And I know that they would never intentionally hurt me. They're just, for the yucks. Yuck, yuck, yuck. If my cousins ever quit messing with me, I would feel like something's very, very wrong. Same with this couple I met. They've been married 48 years. So obviously he knows his wife and how far to push things, right? And if we'd known them better, or if I actually was Jody, that would have changed things. Well, it would have changed everything. I recently came across, I believe it's an Instagram video from E.M. James, and it gave a completely different take on it. And because that's what I do, is try to help us all to think differently or to think outside the box, I think this will be perfect. So this is what he said. They say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But honestly, I disagree deeply. Because when someone fools you, lies to you, uses you, takes advantage of you, or plays with your kindness, that's not your shame. That's their character. And when they do it again, that's still on them. That's who they are. That's the pattern they're committed to. That's the behavior they chose, over and over again. You know why we blame ourselves? Because we're wired to think, I should have known better. I should have seen the signs, should have protected myself. But here's the truth. People never admit trusting someone is not weakness. Lying to someone is. Giving the benefit of the doubt is not a flaw. Abusing it is. Believing in someone's potential is not stupidity. Manipulating the belief is. So if someone fools you 10 times, you're not the one with the problem. They are. Your mistake wasn't trust. Your mistake was assuming they had the same heart as you, the same integrity, the same intention. But shame? The shame stays with them every time because you were real. You were honest. You were sincere. You were exactly who you said you were. And they weren't. And that's where the whole shame on me narrative is wrong. It turns your kindness into a crime and their deception into a clever move. No, shame on the person who fooled you. Shame on the person who knew you would forgive them. Shame on the person who relied on your softness instead of their honesty. Shame on the person who kept taking advantage because they knew you had a good heart. You weren't foolish. You were loyal. You weren't blind. You were hopeful. And you weren't weak. You were just genuine. And someone taking advantage of that isn't a reflection of you. It's a reflection of them. Only them. Every single time. You're probably like, wow, Steffi K, way to suck up April Fool's Day for me. I was having a good day. You can still have a good day, and you can still have some laughs. In fact, I think we all need to laugh a whole lot more. I am actually hilarious. Just ask me. But I think there comes a time when we just need to reflect and look at a joke or a prank from all angles and just make sure that our heart is in the right place and that we have good intent. And I think we're okay. We all have stories that we've laughed at for years, and those are actually some of the very best stories. Laughter should connect us, not quietly tear someone down. And if we have to hide behind, just kidding, we might already know the truth. For the Steffi K thought of the day, just because everyone's laughing doesn't mean it's still funny. Pay attention to the moment your heart stops laughing. That's usually where the truth starts talking. And the truth is, you don't have to stay in something just because it started out light. You're allowed to notice the shift, you're allowed to feel it, and you're allowed to step back, even if nobody else does. Thanks for listening to You Stickin With That? Remember, understanding doesn't happen by accident. It happens when we make space to really hear. So we keep showing up, we keep listening, we keep learning together. And I'll meet you right back here every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern for the next conversation. If this episode made you think of someone, send it to them. And if you haven't already, go ahead and follow the podcast so it's there when you need it. All right, I'll leave you with this. If it stops feeling good, pay attention. So tell me, you still laughing at that?